going? Does everything look like it's going? I'm going to speak as if it is going. Depending on when you're joining me, if you're joining me right here at the beginning, my name is Johnny Hemberger. I'm the mental curator of Geek Therapy Radio. It's a podcast and a radio show. I'm doing something quite a complicated setup here. I wish I could show you. On the stream, you should be able to see that I've put Baby down in the corner so you can see Reaper going. Reaper is what I use to record my podcast and radio show with. So I hope to give you a glimpse of kind of what I do. We'll go over some EQ settings and compression settings. I'll show them to you at least. But yeah, it's a rather complicated process here to get OBS streaming and get Reaper recording at the same time. It's all on the same computer, and I've got 3 monitors going, plugged into HDMI ports and Type-C ports and hubs, but one computer, which is the Asus Zephyrus G14. What is it, 5900H, 8-core, 16-thread processor in the Ryzen. That's the Ryzen 9, and then the GeForce RTX 3060. It's handling like a champ. I'm looking at OBS, and it says CPU usage 1.4%, and I'm broadcasting at 1080p, 29.97 frames per second. I'm getting a little pedantic because that's what we do here on Geek Therapy Radio sometimes, because we're all geeks about something. Now, I'm trying to go to YouTube here so I can see that I'm actually streaming. What is it? And it looks like I am. 16 I don't think anybody is watching at the moment, but that's really not what this is all about. Handling like a champ. What I'm trying to do here is basically tinker with live streaming, seeing if I can get it all going at the same time. Because as you know, or as some of you might know, getting audio drivers to work among different programs at the same time. So to use this one microphone in the same audio interface to record to Reaper and go through OBS at the same time in all the plugins within those 2 programs, it's quite a challenge. I will mention right now, I haven't started recording the podcast yet, and we'll get to that in a minute. I will say if you're using OBS and you have an audio interface that uses ISO drivers. What is it called? What does it stand for? Audio sound card input and output. I think ASIO stands for. Anyways, OBS natively does not play well with ASIO. So you can download a driver, I think from GitHub. Just type in OBS space ASIO and all the pertinent information will come up. All you do is you do that executable on the latest version of OBS, and then you'll have your ISO audio interface available as an audio input in OBS. It's really, really cool. I will at some point put that link maybe down in the comments, and you guys and gals can go from there. Forgive me, I'm getting over an illness. I didn't release a show last week. I was sick. It was Thanksgiving week. Just a lot going on, and I think mainly it's because I've been sick. So I apologize for that going forward. What is YouTube trying to show me? I'm going to type in the chat here and say hello, but I'm going to do the chat module that OBS provides. Can I type in there? It doesn't look like I can type anything in it. Doesn't look like it. I guess I can see the chat in OBS, but I can't actually add anything to it. So I will do the chat through YouTube like as usual. So I'm going to type, hi everybody. I don't think there's anybody watching at all. But if you are watching, let me know. Why can't I see? Oh, there it is. If you are watching, feel free to leave a comment in the chat as we go. And maybe we'll talk about what's going on your mind. This was impromptu. Like I mentioned, this is just me tinkering with streaming settings and making it work with Reaper while I'm using Reaper at the same time. So if nobody's watching, that's completely fine. That's not what this is about. But if you do stumble upon it, late notice also, I think I just made one tweet about it. If you do see it in time and you are watching live, then feel free to join me in the chat. That reminds me, I'm going to go to my Twitter account right now and go to that tweet that one person has liked. Paul has liked it. So I'm going to respond to that tweet by saying, hey, I'm live now. So if anybody sees the tweet, they can respond to it. They can come join me. The link is on the tweet. So I'm live. All right. Just tweeted it out. It's not going to focus. Whatever. There's my Twitter. All right. So let's get started. I'm just going to record the podcast, and you can just watch how I record a radio show and podcast and how I edit it. Like I mentioned, I use Reaper, and I will go ahead and clean up my old session. You can hear, I'm going to press play on it. This is the last show that I recorded many times. I just try to be a little break and all that because... So anyway, that's the audio from the last show that I recorded. I'm just going to go through here and delete them. Delete the old voiceover. And we will start at the beginning. Let me show you my audio compression settings here for the voiceover track in the podcast in Reaper here. So I'll click on FX. There's my EQ. That's pretty radio-tastic EQ there. So boosting the lows, bringing down the boxiness of the mids. Excuse me. Sorry, and then bringing up a little touch of high end, and it winds up sounding okay. I will actually do an A and B. Let me control Z some of my deletes. Yeah, there we go. So, all right, I'm going to play it back, and I'm going to mess with the EQ. I'm going to enable and disable the EQ, and I'm going to do the same thing with the compressor as well, just so y'all can hear it. It probably didn't cost. The cartridge probably wasn't $50. I don't know off the top of my head what it was. With inflation, easily, it was probably more than $50 equivalent. Anyways, you bought it once. I'm going to enable it again. Then you bought it several more times on several more systems. So you probably downloaded it on the a bit more 3DS, body to it, on the Wii, on the Switch, boxiness, and on the Wii U, and whatever. You may have purchased the same. Okay, so I'm going to stop the playback right there, and I'll show you my compressor settings right now in case you're interested. So I set my attack pretty quick, 1 millisecond. I don't do any pre-compression. This is just with this plugin. Most compressor plugins are basically the same functions as far as attack and release and ratios, and sometimes there's knees and all that good stuff. So I do my attack pretty quick, 1 millisecond. So the plosives sound a little bit natural. Release, I usually do around 120, 100. There's no right or wrong here. It's just you do what sounds best. So after you say a word, it's how long the compressor releases and loosens its grip. For me, 120 milliseconds, about a tenth of a second, is good for me. I don't ever do auto release, not in this plugin at least. For ratio, I usually do 3 or 4 to 1. Usually, if I want a little lighter, a little more natural sounding, I leave it at 3. 4 to 1 if I want a little bit more compression. And then the knee size, I do 1 dB, or I can just leave it alone. The curve of the attack, basically, once it reaches its threshold. And where is it? For my threshold, I keep it to where I'm basically making the gain reduction go to around -6. That's what I think works best for at least my podcasts and going out over the radio. My show is on KPRC 950 AM here in Houston, by the way. So let me play this back and show you the compression before and after. Nintendo puts on a master class of getting you to pay like $50 over and over and over again for the same game. So someone who bought The Legend of Zelda for the NES back in, what did it come out? Might only go to 6-ish, mid-80s, dB of mid to late reduction. 80s. When the original Zelda came out, and it probably didn't cost. The cartridge probably wasn't $50. I don't know off the top of my head. It's pretty low. You can't hear it. With inflation, easily, it was probably more than $50. So, I've got quite a lot of makeup gain. Anyways, you bought it once. Then you bought it. I should have it several more times. Oh, better than that, but that's what works. For my master effects, so like basically limiters and things that you'd have on it. What am I using right now? I'm not even using isotope. I'm using the built-in compression and limiting function built into Reaper. Wonderful. So yeah, those are the settings. I use it in a limiter, limiter setup, which is why I have the ratio set to infinity to 1. Technically limiting, if you go to sound school or whatever, they'll tell you that technically limiting is anything over 20 to 1 ratio. So infinity to 1 is more than 20. I really wanted to capture before clipping, and I have the output set to negative 0.1 dB. I don't even have all the way set to 0 because no one's going to hear the difference between a negative 0.1, like a tenth of a decibel, and 0. So I keep it down there just to be extra safe. Digital clipping sounds horrible. Clipping in the analog world is just called distortion. It's what guitars sound like, distorted guitars. That's just analog clipping, basically. But digital clipping is horrific. It's what hell sounds like. Probably shouldn't be cussing on YouTube, but heck is not a very bad word. All right, so I'm going to finish cleaning up the old audio from the last podcast, and then we will get started rolling here. I don't have anything prepared, but let me get into that in the actual show. So what I do is I kind of pre-roll it a little bit before I record to kind of just put myself in the zone with the bump music, and I go from there. I like to zoom out a bit so I can see when the bump music comes back at the end of the segment so that I know when to start kind of wrapping it up. And I also set the volume in my speakers because I'll wear headphones. I mean, I've got some buds right here, but it's more comfortable without. You know, I see a lot of podcasters and stuff wearing the headphones, and I'm just like, to each their own, and they are useful. Don't get me wrong. You don't want monitors blaring feedback while you're recording, so headphones have a use. I'm in a very controlled environment here. I keep my speakers down low so it doesn't feed back into the mic. I've got my voice activating the sidechain ducking of my bump music anyway, so anytime I speak, the bump music automatically comes down under my voice. So anything going through this microphone automatically ducks the bump music, and that's kind of the basic setup that I got here. But let's just get right into the show, and let's see what happens. This is a live stream. If I need to cut and I need to fix something or edit something, you're going to see it. But let's see how fast I can get this done, because I'm tired and I want to go to bed. And obviously I don't sound very good. All right, but let's just get this going here. So record. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I am live streaming this recording. So if you're listening to this podcast later, obviously I'm not live streaming it to YouTube anymore. And if you're listening to this on the radio, obviously I'm not live streaming while I'm recording the radio show right now. But as of recording, I am live streaming, and I'm mentioning that to you because you can go see that re-airing of the live stream, so to speak, if you go to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast on YouTube. Basically, just go to YouTube and type in Geek Therapy Radio, and it will come up. You can type in, this is a good segue to plug all the platforms. So all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok even, I put some videos up there, YouTube, all that good stuff. If you type in Geek Therapy Radio, just look for the red, white, and black color scheme, and that's how you know you've got me. All right, I will remind everybody who is with me right now on the live stream. I think there's 2 of you. That's what my YouTube is showing right now. Oh, it's 1. You can join me in the chat if you want to ask something live as I go, and I'll do my best to acknowledge you. So, like I mentioned before I started the show, I don't have much prepared for the show anyways. This time of year, don't worry. If you're a regular listener to the show, you know that I'm going to get to plenty. This time of year, just to kind of let you behind the veil of radio and media in general, is when radio ratings kind of go down. People are on vacation. There's not people traveling and commuting as much to work. So this is the time of year where you hear radio hosts like taking breaks and going on vacation and bringing in their substitute hosts and re-airing best ofs and things like that. So the fact that I don't have anything specifically prepared for the show isn't a bother, because once this goes to radio, let's just be honest about my airtime, about my slots. I ain't that Michael Berry airtime. But anyways, I have fun. And so if you're listening to the radio, go back, get the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio Podcast, red, white, and black color scheme. You can get the podcast in your favorite podcast app. So whether it's Spreaker or Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever it is, Apple, did I say Apple Podcasts? Whatever it is, iHeartRadio app, Geek Therapy Radio, look for the red, white, and black color scheme, and there you go. Okay, So I see the first thing that I want to talk about, at least in this segment. The first segment, by the way, is 8 minutes, and it's sitting right in front of me. So I don't know how in depth I've talked about this on the show in the past, but my dream computer. So we all had dream PCs, and I'm an 80s baby. I was born in 1983. If you talk to, like a 15-year-old right now, what is your dream PC? What's your dream computer? If they're into PCs and PC gaming and custom PCs, they're going to say, oh, I want a Threadripper, I want a Ryzen 9, or I want a Threadripper, I want the new Intel Core i9, whatever, 20-core beast. I want an RTX 3090. I want 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM and blah, blah, blah. If you asked 15-year-old me what my dream PC was back in the 90s, and I want y'all to think about that. Anybody who's kind of my age or a little older or maybe a tiny bit younger, what was your dream PC when you were 15? I will tell you right now, my dream PC when I was around 15 years old was this. And I'm holding it up to the camera, and I will explain what it is. Is it going to focus? Yeah. I will explain what this is to my radio and podcast listeners if you don't watch this video on YouTube. This is the HP Jornada 680. It's a palm top PC running Windows CE. Oh, this was my dream computer. I'm going to get out of the camera shot so we can focus on the computer, hopefully. Yeah, it looks like it's focusing. This was my dream PC back in the late 90s. And I'm going to turn it on here. There's a Word document that I was working on. It's a voiceover that I was working on for the Houston Museum of Natural Science YouTube page, which you should also subscribe to. And I like to use this Jornada 680 to type scripts, basically, and to type notes and to type scripts with built-in Pocket Word application that's built into this Windows CE device right here. And this little keyboard, I think the Pine phone, was it the Pine phone that recently released a peripheral that you can add to it? I think it's a Linux-based smartphone, but it had a keyboard peripheral that you can add to it. I wish, on that note, let me wrap this up here with the 680. This was my dream PC when I was 15 years old, thereabouts. They say don't meet your heroes? I've met my hero, and it's awesome. This computer is just as good, and I got this like a year ago, and it's still just as great as I ever imagined. I love that I was able to pick this thing up. But that leads me to the next kind of point here. I've mentioned on the show once or twice before that the demise of Windows phones came down to, in my opinion, that they never really utilized the form factor the best. So, in brief, because the segment's wrapping up here, think of a Surface, like a Surface tablet, Microsoft Surface tablet with the touch keyboard case. Not even the touch keyboard case, but the keyboard case with actual chiclets on it. I don't have one up here with me. It's downstairs. But if they would have just made a big smartphone like this, 6.3-inch screen, whatever, this is a Samsung Note 9, but just had that touch keyboard case on it, on a Windows phone, just called the Windows Surface phone, but it had that keyboard case on it, and it had that little kickstand on the back. Winner, chicken dinner. And base it on Android. Or have a full Windows experience if you type in a USB-C display or plug in a mouse or whatever. I just think the demise of the Windows Phone didn't have to be if they would have just used the form factor better. All right, so there's the bump music. We will come back with more Geek Therapy Radio in a moment. Don't go anywhere. You can check the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio Podcast, in your favorite podcast player. Look for the red, white, and black color scheme. And that's it. We'll be right back. Okay, so on the stream, you've seen that I just got out of my first segment. And I'm going to go do a little bit of housekeeping here, just kind of trim things up. And I'm going to go over here and do the same trimmity-doo-dah over here. This mark right here is the 8-minute mark. Since the first segment is exactly 8 minutes, the second segment is 10 minutes, third segment's 11, and the fourth segment is 10, for a total of 39 minutes. I keep everything nice and tidy so I can see my out times. I know that if I'm getting up to that red line, I need to be out. That's a hard brick wall that I'm going to run into. I need to be out by that time. That's 8 minutes for a segment. So I usually use the bump music as a donut on either side of the segment. So I'm going to go back and play this back because it looks like it's kind of peaky. The audio looks good. It's a good hot signal, but it's kind of peaky. I'm going to see how it's hitting my compressor. Ratings kind of go down. People are on vacation. There's not people traveling and commuting as much to work. So this is the time of year where you hear radio hosts like taking breaks and going on vacation and bringing in their substitute hosts and re-airing
I might suss that out
like that.
later
So
when I'm done actually recording this segment.
the fact that I don't have anything specifically
for now,
prepared,
though,
for the show isn't a bother because once this goes to radio,
said, hey, GTR.
Let's just be honest about my airtime.
Since I'm just live streaming and
slots.
not recording at the
I ain't that Michael Berry airtime.
What's up?
But anyways, I have fun. And so if you're listening to the radio,
What's your
go
geek
back,
thing, bro?
get the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio Podcast,
you're
Red, White, and
bro.
Black Color
It's
Scheme. You can get the
21. I
podcast
don't
in your
wanna
favorite
assume
podcast app.
anything.
So whether it's
but
Spreaker
yeah,
or Spotify
YouTube commenter,
or
if
Google
you got a geek thing,
Podcasts
something
or
you're into, trains, airplanes,
whatever it
video
is,
games, whatever.
Apple, did I say
let
Apple
me know.
Podcast? Whatever it is.
Maybe I'll touch on it.
iHeartRadio app.
Well, let me stop that recording, the playback. That probably got confusing on the stream. I'm sorry about that. Let's go ahead and dive into the next segment. And you there in the live chat, feel free to comment some more, and let's talk about what you're into. And I'll be recording, so yeah, I got that. I saw that. I got the double audio, but you'll see I fixed it. I fixed. Okay, so anyways, let's start recording the next segment, and we'll get into it. What was I going to talk about this segment? There was something that I wanted to talk about. Whatever, we'll get into it. So let's go ahead and do this thing. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Currently, as I'm recording, I'm live streaming to YouTube, so go back and look at that video. I'll leave that video up, because obviously if you're listening to this in the podcast or on the radio, you're not hearing the live stream. You're not watching the live stream. It was a kind of a last-minute announcement that I made on Twitter. I don't have thousands of Twitter followers, so I was like, you know what? This is just an experiment. If a couple people join me, which they usually do, it'll be fun to kind of talk to them in the comments and go from there. Ooh, as I'm looking around the solar-powered Geek Therapy Radio studios, by the way, everything I'm doing right now is solar-powered. This light's solar-powered, this microphone, everything. I've got 3 freaking monitors going, including the computer. So the computer screen, I've got this 1440p Dell monitor, both of them running at 144 hertz. Then I have this giant 4K screen up here. That's also sucking a lot of power. Currently, with everything running, I am consuming about 180 watts. At the end of the day, which the end of the day for my solar panels right now in December, early December, is about 2 p.m. before I get too many shadows from my house. I was fully charged. My batteries were up at 14.4, which is the limit that I set for them. Top limit for lithium iron phosphate batteries is technically 14.6. But I like to keep my top charge at 14.4 just to leave a little bit of headroom. It's all about leaving some headroom, some buffer. But right now I am consuming 175 watts. I'm going to see what the battery voltage is. Hold on one second. This is live radio, folks. Live radio. Live pre-recorded radio. My voltage is at 13.1, 13.0 fluctuating. So that is still a full top charge. Okay, so I'm looking at the live stream here, and I'm looking at the comments. And YouTube commenter is, that's his name on YouTube. He's letting me know something here. Let's see. I got to pre-screen this before I read it out. Obviously, because I don't want to say anything terrible. I have lots of geek things. Mainly hardware modifications and coding as a kid. Oh, cool. As he's gotten older, mainly locksmithing, flint knapping, and firearm modifications. Whoa. I was always the guy who fixed everyone's computers. That still runs to this day. Wowie zowie. And then he says he loves my podcast, which, thank you so much, YouTube commenter. Flint knapping. Can you, while I'm recording here, and I know there's a little bit of a delay, can you explain what flint knapping is? Just layman's terms of what flint knapping is. Flint knapping. I know what firearm modifications are. I know what locksmithing is, but flint knapping. That is piqued my pickle.
not to be too graphic about it. Anyways, so before I got wonderfully sidetracked by a live stream comment, I'm looking over here in my solar-powered Geek Therapy Radio studios. Can I pull it into frame here? Is it going to be visible? Yeah. My RCA 77DX. You should go to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast YouTube channel right now and watch the video that I just made on this RCA 77DX. In a nutshell, it's been in my family since it was new in 1954, and my grandfather worked for RCA. As I mentioned in the video, I don't know if he got it as a corporate gift or if he just bought it and brought it home. Either way, we've had it since 1954. To my knowledge, it has been unmodified and not restored in any way, shape, or form that we know of. My dad used it in our first radio station when he started out his career. And then my uncle had it for several years after that, and now I have it back to continue the. So my uncle passed the radio torch since I got this show in 2017, and I have used this on a few of my podcasts and radio shows. There's a whole, basically, series of podcasts where I'm using this thing, like trying to figure out the best settings for it. The EQ is just like learning about ribbon microphones and how drastically you need to EQ them to get a good modern sound out of it. But EQing is not even the main thing. The main thing with ribbon microphones, especially vintage microphones, is gain. A lot of cheap audio interfaces simply don't have enough gain to get a good strong signal out of a ribbon microphone. So people think they're broken. They got to, if you have some cheap $100 Focusrite Scarlett, which those are great interfaces, don't get me wrong. Scarlett's and Focusrite, that's an amazing company. I've used them. I love them. But a lot of times these $100 interfaces don't have enough clean gain to give a ribbon microphone. So you need something like a inline booster. And I've got it right here, inline gain booster. Basically, you feed this phantom power. This is a dynamite that I have because it's a little bit cheaper than a cloud lifter. Hopefully it'll focus on there. Will it maybe? Yeah, so this is an inline gain booster, and this basically boosts the gain coming out of the ribbon mic by like 20 decibels or something like that, so that you don't have to use as much gain on the gain knob of your audio interface. It cleans up the audio a bit. I say a bit. Yeah, so if you have a vintage ribbon microphone or almost any ribbon microphone, inline gain booster is your best friend. And I definitely have to use it with modern equipment for the 67-year-old RCA Type 77 DX. But anyways, there's a whole series of podcasts that I made using the 77 DX and trying to get the best settings out of it. And I wound up saying, where I've kind of left it is, my workhorse is this MXLV 67G. I bought this for $100, maybe it was $90. I bought it from Sam Ash in Northridge, California in 2003. My goodness, all these memories just come flooding back. Was it Sam Ash? Was it in Northridge? There was a Circuit City. Holy crap, I am dating now. Circuit City in Northridge that I used to go to get RAM, DDR RAM, for my Celeron computer that I was going to sound school with. My goodness gracious. So anyways, I got this first microphone, yes, in 2003. It was from Sam Ash. Maybe it was closer to downtown Los Angeles. At the time, I was living in Simi Valley. If I got any Californians listening to the podcast, let me know. Give me a shout. But this is my workhorse, this MXLV 67G. I think it's still $100 today. Given with inflation, that means that it's just gotten cheaper and cheaper over time, over the last almost 20 years, 18, 19 years. Oh, I feel so old. Anyways, that's my workhorse, and I use the ribbon microphone, the 77DX, as another paintbrush, as another color in the palette, occasionally. But it's not going to be a workhorse. It should be kind of protected anyways. But I have it on a nice strong boom arm here, and I do use it from time to time. That video I made on YouTube, specifically about the 77DX, I recorded the entire voiceover with the 77DX, and I go over the gain settings, and I go over the EQ settings and all that stuff in that video with a lot of sexy glamour shots. For those of you just listening to the podcast or just listening to the radio, the RCA 77DX is what David Letterman had on his desk, is what Larry King had on his desk. It's that iconic, it looks like a giant medicine pill. It's a very iconic microphone. I'll show it one more time to the stream if you go back on YouTube and see what I'm talking about here. So let's kind of start wrapping up the segment because my friend here on YouTube is letting me know what Flint Knapping is. Taking rocks that are similar to glass and turning them into knives. Awesome. They break like glass in a predictable way. Like jade. Jade does the same thing. Jade, that mineral we have at the museum, Treasures in Gold and Jade. The artists carve out like little tiny ants and stuff out of jade. And they were talking about the veins and the lines and the way the rock breaks, and it can be finicky and brittle, and it can be temperamental. You have to start over sometimes. So that's basically what he's saying Flint Knapping is, taking rocks that are similar to glass, so I would imagine like jade, and turning them into knives. They break like glass in a predictable way that allows you to form razor-sharp edges for primitive tooling, essentially what is used to make arrowheads and primitive knives. Awesome. And then he mentions, oh, cool, you strive to have the best audio like mine to be best at what I do. Yeah, and you lived in Huntington Beach. I don't want to give too much of your information away, YouTube commenter, but awesome. Yeah, see, I lived in California. He says he's a Texan. Of course, I'm a Texan too. I was born just minutes from the Alamo. Just minutes from the Alamo in San Antonio. So no matter where I've lived in the country, I'm a Texan. I'm a freaking Texan, man, through and through. Anyways, more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so the live stream is still going. I'm not going to play back any double audio. But I am going to trim the ends of this recording here. I hope the few of you that are joining me are enjoying this little glimpse at what I do behind the scenes here, making a podcast and a radio show. If anybody else, awesome YouTube commenter. If anybody else wants to join in the live chat while I'm recording this and just let me know, what geek thing you're into. Obviously, I'm going to kind of pre-screen what you say, so I'm not going to say anything terrible. Before I record the next segment here, just a quick reminder, like for people watching the live stream or watching this on YouTube, I classify geek things. We're all geeks about something, and lean into your geek thing and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean things like heroin. Like, we're not geeks about hardcore drugs. There are geeks about, smoking other stuff, legal stuff. I'm not getting into all that kind of stuff. And there are geeks about brewing, like brewing alcohol, brewing beer. That's okay. Geek things that don't hurt you or hurt anybody else. That's what I'm talking about. So I told a story a while back, just a few weeks ago about, I heard about I was using a theoretical, like a guy who, let's say he's a 50-year-old man, and he collects Barbie dolls, Barbies all the way back to the 50s or whatever. And some people might think it's weird. A 50-year-old man, a grown man, collecting Barbie dolls, what a weirdo. I'm like, what? He's not hurting anybody, and that's his thing, and he's not pushing it on anybody. So, yeah, you might be a little weirded out by it, but it doesn't mean that he's doing anything wrong, or that he's a bad person, or that he's a creep. It's just, that's his geek thing. That's what he collects, and he's not pushing it on anybody, and he's not bothering anybody. And he's not hurting himself, and it might be his way of coping with other things. So we aren't the ones to judge other people for what they're geeks about. We may need to intervene if we're friends, if they're doing something that causes them or somebody else harm. Obviously, if you're addicted to drugs, or if you're hurting other people, if your geek thing is being a bully and seeing other people, in pain, that's a whole different topic. But we're all geeks about something. I geek out about batteries and battery chemistry and nuclear fusion and nuclear energy and solar energy and wind turbines and all sorts of things. Even fossil fuels and natural gas and all energy production in general is just a fascinating realm. Maybe I'll talk about that going into the next segment, because the nature of the radio station that I'm on, if I start talking about renewable energy, that might it might make some people change the dial. Anyways, let's jump back into recording a segment here. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. You can find the Geek Therapy Radio podcast in your favorite podcast app. Just type in Geek Therapy Radio or Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. Honestly, by the time you start typing out therapy, it should come up. And as long as you click on Geek Therapy Radio with the red and white and black color scheme, that's how you know it's me. That red, white, and black color scheme is across all social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff. Just type in Geek Therapy Radio, look for the red, white, and black color scheme, and that's how you know you've got me. So I've mentioned that I'm live streaming this as I'm recording this. I'm on YouTube right now, live streaming it for a few people that are watching and joining me in the comments. I mentioned in between the breaks that I was going to bring up renewable energy a little bit in this segment, and that given the nature of the radio station I'm on, that might either piss some people off or make them change the channel or whatever. But I just want to tell you my angle on renewable energy. Obviously, I've mentioned on the show many, many times that my studio here is solar powered. It's nighttime right now. I'm recording it. It's 10:08 right now, p.m. on a Wednesday as I'm recording this. How are my lights on? Solar energy depends on batteries. You know, people say, oh, when the sun goes down, you can't use the energy anymore. No, that's just ignorance. You store it one way or another, usually in batteries. Tesla, Elon Musk at least, is using one of his subsidiaries to build a giant multiple megawatt battery storage system. I think it's in Angleton. You know that Tesla has moved to Texas. Elon Musk has moved into operations to Texas. SpaceX is already in Texas. The Gigafactory's in Texas. He's now building a big giant battery pack, which is funny because I could talk about Elon Musk for like an entire show, but it's funny that he's bringing a big giant battery to Texas. They've proven this technology in Australia already. Big giant battery to Texas, because I tweeted at him last February 2021 during our hard freeze, where the whole grid was basically minutes from melting down for months, and everyone was trying to blame it on solar panels and blame it on wind turbines, which is just poppycock. Those make up a fraction of the percentage of the electricity we use. I think renewable energy in Texas is like 20%, and that didn't account for. I don't mean to get so sidetracked here, but if it was just the renewable energy causing the problems, that would mean a few 100,000 homes would be without power. That's literally how many homes lost power in Texas during the hard freeze in February. A few 100,000 homes lost freeze directly because of the wind turbines and solar panels and stuff going offline. The other 4 to 5 million people lost it because natural gas infrastructure froze up. It wasn't the renewable energy that put millions of people out of power. It was the failure of the entire infrastructure, about 80% of which being fossil fuels. So when you hear radio shows and you hear talk shows showing the frozen wind turbines, it's just because they know their audience. They know who the P1 is, and they're just trying to piss that person off and keep the misinformation flowing to keep you hyped and keep you listening. But that's not really the case. The numbers don't work for that. Anyways, I tweeted during that freeze, hey, Elon Musk, knowing about the big giant battery he put in Australia on a dare, because that's Elon Musk, I say, how about we put a battery in Texas for our wind turbines and solar or whatever, just more backup. We obviously need it. And within a few weeks, he announced that they're building a battery. Not because of me, obviously not because of me. This is something that was already in the works long before I tweeted it. He probably never even saw my tweet. But he's building a big giant battery to store that renewable energy. So I wanted to just give my kind of personal use case and feelings towards renewable energy and why I have, like I said, a solar-powered studio here, and I have an EV, and I have an electric mountain bike. But we can focus mainly on my solar panels and the EV. So my solar-powered studio here, I've got a battery pack, a 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery as storage that stores like 22,560 watts worth of electricity that I can use from, or 200 amp hours at 200 amps at like 12.8 volts nominal equals out to like 2560, whatever it is. So I can use 2,560 watts theoretically overnight. Right now, I'm using 175 watts to run the studio here and record this podcast and record the radio show and have all this computer running and all these screens on and the lights on and the camera going. So if you do some math, 170 watts So 200 and what is it? 2,500 watts divided by 170 watts. I don't know what the math works out there. That's several hours that I can be running this. No problem. I could probably run it until the sun starts coming back up. But why I built this, it's not because I'm some sort of greeny weenie, as I put it. I don't believe that drum circles save the world. Don't think that at all. Money changes the world. It's kind of funny to me that it's this funny observation, and I don't defend Elon Musk at all because he is very much, well, he's Elon Musk. But I do think it's funny that politicians make entire careers out of virtue signaling and spouting hot air about climate change. And then a person comes along, a billionaire comes along, who hates politicians, who actually spearheaded the entire automotive industry weaning off of fossil fuels. Do you know why he did that? Do you know why Tesla did what Chevy couldn't back in the late 90s with the EV1, and what Toyota, they were doing it a bit with the Prius, with the hybrid, which hybrid still burns fuel. It's a whole thing. Anyways, EVs in the past from big manufacturers were experiments. I mean, they're running off of lead acid batteries. Lithium wasn't there the way it is today. And two, when we started getting lithium battery packs, so like in the Toyota Prius, they started marketing that type of technology towards hippies. They made it all about wearing a bandana and handing out water bottles and cleaning up beaches, and they made it a big environmental thing. And that's not a problem. Being an environmentalist is not a problem. Being good stewards of our planet is not a problem. But it wasn't great. In my opinion, it wasn't the best for marketing, for as far as EVs are concerned and such. So one of it's the technology catching up. The other thing is marketing Priuses to hippies, basically. Hippies don't have money. I'm just I'm being satirical here. What Elon Musk did, he said, let's make EVs sexy. Let's use the machine of capitalism to sell EVs. And he didn't make Tesla about being environmentally conscious. He made Tesla about having what everybody else wants, having a car that looks really cool, having a car that looks sexy, selling that sex appeal. The models of Tesla themselves are Model S, Model 3, which is a backwards E, Model X, and Model Y. That's sexy. That even spells sexy. Basically, he used capitalism to further green energy and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. That's just my take on it. That's just how I've seen it. And it's just funny to me to see politicians who have made an entire career out of virtue signaling about environmental change and protecting the environment, but doing nothing but talking. And then the guy who is a butthead billionaire, quote unquote, comes and actually almost single-handedly starts the entire industry to wean off of fossil fuels. I as an observer, I could kind of like seeing that dichotomy. Gosh, how it sticks in the craw of these virtue signalers that a billionaire is actually the one that's reducing our dependency on fossil fuel. Oh, I hate that. To conclude that sentiment, why it's funny to me is I don't know where we got this idea that people who actually changed the world had to be nice. Where did we get that idea that actual inventors and people who change the face of the planet and the future of humanity as we know it are supposed to play the PR game, are supposed to kiss the ring of the politicians spouting at the mouth? Why did we ever get the idea that Elon Musk had to be nice about it, or that he couldn't make money off of environmentalism? His genius was that he said, I can make billions of dollars off of environmentalism. I'm not getting into whole government subsidies and that and the overvalued Tesla stock and all that. I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying he used the mechanism of capitalism, in his case, to further EVs further into the future. If he didn't do that with Tesla, Chevy and Ford and GM owns Chevy, all the big three manufacturers, and Volkswagen and Lexus and all that, wouldn't do anything about it. They just keep selling the internal combustion engine for the end of time because it's much cheaper to produce right now. It's only that that Tesla started threatening sales and they saw that a market was being carved out for EVs that they all started to get on board. And that wasn't done in a drum circle. That wasn't done in a drum circle. Why do the people who change the world have to be nice? Why did we expect them to be nice? Hope I didn't lose any listeners or followers or whatever for that rant. I'm just saying, I'm just observing. The world is gray. It is not black and white. The people who change the world aren't always nice and rarely are. So anyways, more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Okay, I see, commenter, I see you in the live stream there. Let me get to what you're saying and acknowledge that in the next segment here, in the last segment. See, if you remember the beginning of the live stream, I said that I don't have anything planned for the show, but I'm not worried about it. Ain't worried about it. I've done hundreds of these shows so far, and one of the marks, so I'll let you be on the curtain here in between segments again. Before I got the radio show, my biggest worry, my bosses at iHeart or Clear Channel at the time, was like, hey, give us a 10-minute mock show or like a 13-minute mock show. And my worry was like, holy crap, how am I going to talk for 13 minutes straight? No break. Fast forward, what I quickly realized is the actual problem is, how do I turn it off on a mark? How do I turn it off at 8 minutes? How do I turn it off at 10 minutes? How do I turn it off at 11 minutes? How do I say what I want to say? Stream of consciousness and cap it to segment times. So the problem wasn't coming up with enough material to talk about. The problem was, what you had to learn was when to stop, how to stop that train, how to slow down that train as naturally as possible before you get to the end of the line. So for anybody else out there who's thinking about doing podcasts, and don't feel sorry for commenting. So anybody out there thinking about doing podcasts or wanting a radio show, whatever, I would say just practice talking, stream of consciousness. Just start talking about, I'm looking at a PS Vita right here. Just start talking about the PS Vita and whatever you know about the PS Vita. I never really played any games for the PS Vita. This is all an example here of just flow of consciousness and doing a radio show, doing a podcast. I never played any in the PS Vita games that use the touch sensors on the back. I think Little Big World used it. The screen on the PS Vita still looks great. It's OLED, which was, I think this came out in 2009-ish, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of the first handheld devices to use an OLED screen, and it still looks great today. My only kind of personal complaint about the Vita is that I don't like the controls as much as the PSP, the original PSP, which I don't have. Well, it's in a container off to my right. I'm not going to get it right now. But I haven't hacked this Vita. I just frankly haven't got around to hacking the Vita yet to put custom firmware and homebrew on there. I remember hacking the PSP back in the day. I didn't personally hack the PSP. A hack and a crack came out from Dark Alex, who was just, man, if you're listening right now and you know who Dark Alex is, that's OG. All right, stopping about the PS Vita, just giving an example. I talked for a few minutes right there just about the PS Vita. Some people would call it vamping. All right, so I'm going to start here the next segment, the last segment. But first I want to read what commenter here has said. Like, again, commenter, you don't have to apologize for commenting here. Let's see, probably never heard of me. Forging metal? Okay. Okay, let me get to this. Let me get to these comments in the next segment here, commenter. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, as they say. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Here comes the plug. It's the beginning of the segment, so here comes the plugs. Just type in Geek Therapy Radio into any social media or YouTube or TikTok, anywhere, your favorite podcast player, whatever it is. Google, just type in Geek Therapy Radio, and no matter what you find, whatever outlet, whatever platform you find, just look for the red, white, and black color scheme, and that's how you know you've got me. That's how you know you've got Geek Therapy Radio. I'm wearing the shirt today, and it's short. It's bearing my midriff like it's 2002 Britney Spears. Should I show you? I should do that for the live stream. I should play some sexy music. Can I do it? There we go. Pardon me. I don't have a dump button here, a cough button here in my solar-powered studio because I'm pre-recording it, and I could have just edited that out, but I'm not gonna. I am not gonna. Okay, to the live stream comments. Again, if you're just listening to the radio broadcast of this or the podcast later on, obviously I'm not still live streaming, but let's continue on the conversation I'm having with a fella named YouTube commenter here in the comments. So he says his next geek thing will probably end up hurting him. Let me just read his words. My next geek thing will probably end up hurting me. Once I get the opportunity, I'd love to take on forging metal. Me too, since I can already make knives out of rock. That would make perfect sense. As I'm reading this here, and I know there's a delay here, have you set up a forge? Have you looked into setting up a forge? Don't get any ideas from me, but I think you can do it like with a leaf blower and clay and charcoal and things like that. Don't go burning your house down with basically a flame-throwing leaf blower. But I've seen it done. I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube tutorials on how to build a forge at home. That's so cool. Another thing I would like to get into is welding. Forging and welding. I don't even know what I would make if I was forging. I would probably just make knives. Really crude, crappy knives. But they'd be my knives. They'd be Johnny Hamburger knives. And I'd be proud of them. And I would hang them up all gangly. And like, what is this, a kindergarten project? What is this? No, I made that knife. It is just as stabby as any other knife. So, yeah, I hear you with the forge. We went into lithium here. He says, you imagine it'll get bored, but I'm looking forward to it. Let me know how that goes. So he says, but what do you think about the fact that lithium mining is very bad, true, for the environment, and they say it takes a long time for you to become green first production? That is a very, very, very good point. I knew that live streaming this would be fruitful. That's a very good question. People bring that up all the time. But mining lithium and strip mining for lithium, that's terrible for the environment and the production issues and transport. You're burning fossil fuel, and it's still fossil fuels to transport and make the diggers. And lithium itself is toxic, and mining it is toxic. Byproducts are toxic. They are. There they are. And it is a straight up fact. If you buy let's say you buy a Tesla or a Chevy Bolt. I have a Chevy Bolt. Yes, the ones that burst into flames. There's like 10 of them that burst into flames out of a couple 100,000. I'm in that whole recall thing. I'm going to get a new battery, extended range. It's going to be great. Anyways, it is true that, let me go back to my point. If you buy a Tesla, it depends what state you buy it in as far as how quickly you go green with it. Because yes, I don't know if people notice, but in a Tesla or any EV, there's lots of plastics and there's lots of things in there that are petroleum based, synthetic fibers, all sorts of things that are based on fossil fuels, petroleum. You can't do anything without petroleum. Petroleum's in my shirt, petroleum's in my pants, petroleum's in my watch, petroleum's in this RCA 77DX, in this microphone, in this pop screen, in this computer. It's just filled with petroleum. My speakers, everything relies on petroleum and fossil fuels. Everything is made with it. Everything. You have things in your mouth. If you've had dental work, there are things based in petroleum in your freaking mouth right now. There's no way to live completely petroleum free. Fossil fuel free. There's just no way, and it's stupid to think that you can. Sorry, I don't mean to say stupid, be so blunt like that, but it's ignorant to think that you can live a life completely free of petroleum without going out in the desert somewhere butt naked and just trying to survive off the land as much as you can. By all means, more power to you if you want to do that, but people like Occupy Wall Street, people tweeting on phones and iPads made in China from petroleum. That was funny. That was funny to me. If you haven't realized, now I'm a realist. Yes, I'm a geek, and I'm all-inclusive, and I include everybody here no matter what religion or walk of life or sexual orientation or who you love or what you... I include everybody. We're all geeks about something. I firmly believe no matter your politics, we all love Star Wars and computers and video games. There's something that we can have in common. That politics is just one part of a totem pole of 100 different pieces. And we're going to go at each other's throats and hate each other over politics, over one piece of who we are. That's silly to me. So I'm very inclusive here. I say I draw a circle in the sand, not a line in the sand. But I am still entitled to my own opinions. Just like you're entitled to your own opinions. It doesn't mean we have to hate each other for it. It's just my opinion that I see the world from a realist point of view. There's never a black and white issue. So remember Occupy Wall Street 2011? I've got my ideas on why that happened. But people tweeting about the 1% and everything like that from their iPhones, from their iPads, from their Android devices, tweeting about petroleum and fossil fuels while they're wearing synthetic materials and while they're using devices that are based in petroleum, and they got here in vehicles based in petroleum, and their friggin' tents that they made were based nylon petroleum tents. It's just ironic, man. It's either like, to me, you have to, that is from ignorance. That's just from lack of education about where the products you use come from. So if you don't know about something, keep your mouth shut about something. Basically, if you haven't, so I tie that into racial things too. You don't know, speaking as a white person, I don't know what a black man has gone through. I have not walked in his shoes, so I don't comment or pretend to know how to fix the problems with that they face. I don't have the audacity to think that I was here's what will fix that. Let's go into the ghetto or whatever, and let's just do this, and that'll fix it. Let's just throw money at this thing. Here's what they need. No, I'm not ever going to say anything like that because I'm not that ignorant. I have not walked a mile in another person's shoes. The best I can be is empathetic. If somebody who is going through a struggle, someone who has different attributes than me, different lifestyle than me, different orientation than me, identifies different than me, wants to tell me what they go through, absolutely I'm going to listen and I'm going to be empathetic and I'm going to learn. But I'm not going to spout off about things that I don't know about. I will try not to, at least. So these college kids, mostly white college kids at Occupy Wall Street, tweeting about bringing down the system and billionaires and the 1% from their friggin' Apple iPhones in their synthetic tents and their synthetic clothes and driving cars up. It was just titillating to see, basically, as an observer from afar. Like, you just don't realize. And your ignorance is what's causing you to spout off at the mouth about this. You're just making yourself look foolish. So back to the point here. What about lithium being dirty for the environment and you not basically going green for several thousand miles, tens of thousands of miles in a Tesla, for example? Depends where you are. If you're in Kentucky, which just burns nothing but coal, you're really not doing much for the environment. You're just not doing much. It's going to take so long to break even on the green energy thing and go carbon neutral. If you're in Texas and you're charging off of renewable energy, then you're going to hit that mark a lot faster. But let's get back to the brass tacks and root of this question. Lithium is bad for the environment. Yes, it is. That is why, but that is the stepping stone. Just like fossil fuels basically fueled the Industrial Revolution and fueled us up to now and everything we create and build, the green energy revolution is going to be built on the back of fossil fuels. Now going up to lithium, new battery technology is going to be built on the back of lithium before we get to another chemistry that is not bad for the environment to mine, that is not bad for the environment to produce. But right now, yes, lithium is bad, but in the future, within the next 10 to 20 years, as battery chemistry gets better, recycling gets better, then it's going to be even better and better and better in the environment. But let's make no mistake that right now, mining lithium is bad for the environment. That wraps up what I was going to say. I don't buy EVs, and I set up the solar paneled studio as a bug out room, basically, so that I'm never without power. We can go through another grid crippling storm, and I still am able to generate electricity. I have an EV because I think it's cool. It's nerdy technology, and I just think it's really neat. Same reason I have the EV mountain bike. You are worthy of love. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next time. I had to get out of that segment quick. You two comment. Let me finish your comments here. I listen to your show every night and drive home. Weekend, sure, some points disagree with. That's awesome. Perfect. But I listened to everything agreed with. Wouldn't be boring. Exactly right. I'm right there with you, commenter. I'm happy. I am happy that you disagree with me on things. How boring would it be if you just agreed with everybody in your life? And I know I'm not recording right now. I'm just doing the live stream here. But, I have friends that are polar opposite spectrums. And everyone's polar opposite political spectrum for me, I think. There are far left liberals and far right conservatives that I have as friends and family. And I don't identify with the extremism. I kind of sit in the middle. It's like a terrible place to be in no man's land where everyone's slinging. Because I have
points to bring up and point out about these different worlds of view from the left and right that are like, that's just going to wind up pissing both people off. So, but at the same time, I like hearing opinions from both sides because that's how you kind of come to the middle and form your own opinion. I don't hate anybody based on their opinion. I don't unfriend. I can't imagine unfollowing somebody on Twitter because they had an opinion or they made a mistake. That's the other thing. I don't like using these buzzwords like cancel culture or woke or whatever. I don't like those buzzwords because that's exactly what it is. It's hype as buzzword. And I don't like reducing movements or reducing feelings or opinions down to cancel culture and wokeness. It's nonsensical to me. But I don't defend mistakes that celebrities make, let's just say, or politicians. I don't defend the mistakes they make. It depends on the mistake. I mean, if you were flying on Epstein's jet going to that island, I'm not a... yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But if you made a joke, like Dave Chappelle is getting so much crap right now. So much. He's getting so much flack for comedy routines that should be known to be satire, that don't actually express his real feelings towards, the LGBTQ community, but they're taken as they're offensive. And so, yes, they are offensive. I've watched the stand-up comedies. They are extremely offensive. Extremely offensive. I can understand why people are offended by it. Absolutely understand why people are offended by it. It's super offensive. He tells these jokes, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, how did he say that? Oh, that's so terrible. That's so wrong. But my first thought isn't to cancel him. My first thought isn't to spearhead a campaign to get him taken down or destroy his career. That's just... he's making jokes that people are offended by. And again, I can't assume to feel the way an LGBTQ plus person feels because I don't identify as that. So that's why I keep my mouth shut about how to treat that situation, what they should do about situation, because I don't live that situation. But I'm just saying, from my point of view, from my perspective as a straight white male in America right now, that I can understand being pissed at somebody. I can't understand canceling somebody or unfollowing them because they have a different opinion than you do. As long as it's not them on the whole. Like, if you look at Dave Chappelle, for example, on the whole, he's a wonderful person by all accounts and by all evidence we have. He's a great person, but he has this one routine that he does that's horrific. I'll say it. It's a horrific routine that he does. Horrific talking point. But that's one of his talking points out of this tapestry of a human being. So it's like if you got a turd on the Mona Lisa. If a cat walked by and a little bit of turd particle flew out of a cat's butt, landed right on Mona Lisa's cheek, you'd be like, Mona Lisa's terrible now. Let's burn the Mona Lisa. Let's cancel it. Let's take it out of the Louvre. Let's bury it in the basement. We're never going to look at the Mona Lisa again. Let's go on strike against the Mona Lisa because now she has a little fleck of turd on her cheek. No, it's a beautiful painting that got a little turd on it. And that's kind of what I feel about Dave Chappelle. Yes, he is his own turd. This is getting really weird right now. But I can't imagine canceling them or not following somebody because of a disagreement. If it's their whole way of life, sure. I'm not going to follow any Nazis. I'm not going to follow any racists, any demonstrated racists. I'm not going to follow them. I'm not going to agree with them. I'm not going to make them part of my life. But a friend or a family member that I love who voted for Trump or Biden or whatever, I am not going to unfriend or unfollow or not invite them to my Thanksgiving dinner because that person just so happens to be an expert at this or that or have astronomy in common with me or whatever in common that we bond over. There's so many more things about that person. They voted for somebody else. Who cares? That I disagree with. I don't care. You vote however you want. Remember back in the day, and I'll start wrapping up the stream here because now I'm just kind of ranting. Back in the day, who you voted for used to be a very private affair. Used to be a very private matter. Why do we even have the drapes in the privacy dividers at the polls now?
if it doesn't matter. If you're just going to go onto Facebook and be like, I'm voting for Biden. I'm voting for Trump. Here's why you're stupid if you don't. Da-da-da, I hate you. You're not coming to Thanksgiving because you're a conservative. You're not coming to Thanksgiving because you're a liberal or whatever. When did we get to that point? I know exactly when it started, when CNN first went on the air in the 24-hour news cycle. That's exactly when it started happening. But that's beside the point. It used to be that who you voted for in your politics were a private thing. It was gauche. You didn't talk about that. It's like you didn't talk about your finances, how much money you made. Who you voted for was a private, sacred thing. Now it's like you can't have a conversation with somebody without them bringing up who'd you vote for. What's your politics? What do you think about Biden doing this? What do you think about Trump doing that? Can I just have a beer, man? Can I just sit here and enjoy our time together? Can we just talk about something that we both agree on? There's 100 things we agree on. This one thing we don't agree on. I'm not going to get into a conversation that's going to divulge to name calling and stuff, because it doesn't matter. It's your own opinions about politics. It's your opinions that matter to you. It doesn't matter to me who you vote for. I'm just happy that we're different enough in that regard to make things interesting. I'm not going to cancel you for it or think less of you. Man, I know who knew that my stream was going to divulge into this, but I know, and I'll read the comments here in a second. I know conservative atheists and liberal Christians, very passionate liberal Christians, very passionate conservative atheists. I know scientists who have PhDs that don't trust doctors and don't go to the doctor. I know people with master's degrees and PhDs still that think the earth is 6,000 years old. So someone's background in education and political leanings and opinions in politics really doesn't matter. It really, really, really doesn't matter. You're going to find something out of everybody that you vehemently disagree with. Vehemently. Take your best friend, you think right now, your best friend, the person you would have in your foxhole, basically, your foxhole friend. You know what I'm talking about. It's the friend that if the crap hits the fan, you want them by your side come hell or high water. That person who you love like a brother or a sister, there's something about them that you'll hate enough to look down on them for if you dig deep enough. So why? There's something in everybody that you can find to hate. Why do it? And if you do find it, why kick them out of your life for it? Maybe you said I'm sick and that it's getting late, that I'm getting a little delirious and I'm ranting like this, but just be good to each other, man. Just be good to each other. Lean into your geek thing. We're all geeks about something. That's the motto of the show. We're all geeks about something. You're free to disagree with me. I'm free to disagree with you. Doesn't mean we have to hate each other. Doesn't mean we can't geek out about things. And in fact, we can embrace the fact that we don't agree on things. Like me and YouTube commenter here are. There's lots of things that we disagree with, not necessarily YouTube commenter here, but there's no way I agree with everybody in my audience, and there's no way everybody in my audience agrees with me 100% of the time. All right, YouTube commenter. I'm just doing the live stream here. I always appreciate how you end your podcast. I am worthy of love. You remind me about that. I'm saying this because you're anonymous commenter, if that's okay. I don't have your name or anything like that. I know you were Huntington Beach for a time. Anyways, yes, I am worthy of love. You remind me about that even in the toughest of times. It always picks me up. You're going to make me cry, man. Make me cry. That's why no matter what I talk about on the show, no matter how saucy and spicy I get sometimes, I remind everybody that you are worthy of love. Even if you voted for Trump, you're worthy of love. And to be fair, even if you voted for Biden, you're still worthy of love. You are worthy of love. If more people... it can only benefit the world and society if people realize their worth and their value as human beings, that they are worthy of love, giving love, receiving love. When someone says, I love you, you don't have to think, I don't deserve it. Thank you for loving me, and I love you, and you can tell somebody you love them and know that they deserve it, even if you disagree with them on some level. Knowing your worthiness, and that's why Geek Therapy Radio, I say we're all geeks about something, because I think our geek thing and our hobbies and our passions helps if we need reminders of our worth. Like, hey, I can Flint Knap. I can do something cool with my hands. It's rare. It's getting rarer and rarer that people can do things with their hands. They can code. They can do things. I think that by embracing our geek thing and our hobbies and our passions, that that helps remind us of our value and our worth, and builds self-respect. Comedians were always offensive. That's what is funny, making fun of everyone. Well, except for Kramer. Yeah, well, Kramer. What's the actor's name? When he went off on his rant, I will not repeat it because it felt like he was angry. What he was saying was not satire, and I'm not calling him a racist. I don't, because I've heard his apologies, and since he's ducked on the radar and he's come back up a little bit with Jerry Seinfeld talking about stuff, and they addressed it head on. I don't think he's a bad person. I think he made a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake, and that mistake should not be taken lightly at all. But I think Louis C.K. kind of the same way. Louis C.K., his stuff came out during like the Me Too movement, and I won't say what he did, but he kind of made people observe things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise want to observe. But he got out ahead of it, and he apologized for it, and then he ducked down under the radar. And I think they're saying something there. Whoever's going to come out of this Epstein trial, or the Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever trial, there are going to be some heroes and politicians that people worship that are going to be outed as monsters. There's a difference between a human being and a monster. I'm not going to allow monsters into my life, or allow monsters to control how I think, basically. If you can't make fun of everyone, you can't make fun of everyone. Except you can make fun of a certain race no matter what. No consequences, da-da-da. Sorry, Johnny. Look forward to the next podcast. So here's the thing. I agree. You should be able to make fun of everyone. That's to me, that's showing love. In a weird way, I agree with what you're saying here. Making fun of everybody shows love. When I hear an African American comedian making fun of white people, it's the funniest thing in the world. It can't really go the other way though right now in society, and I understand that. It's way too touchy. A white comedian can't do the same thing about a black comedian. It's just the way it is right now. Perhaps it's the way it should be, perhaps it's not. Whatever. It's just, I couldn't dream of going up on stage and doing the same thing an African American comedian does. Wouldn't dream of it. Wouldn't think it's my place right now. So to the point of comedy here. Yeah, you're not going to ruin the podcast. It's not on the podcast. It's just the live stream. The last point I'll make about comedians, and I'll start wrapping it up here. Either everything is fair game or nothing is. That's the thing about censorship. If you can censor them, one group of people, that means they can censor you. You set the precedent that you can just censor what you disagree with. So in comedy's kind of like, to me, one of the last sacred bastions where everything should be sacred and able to be joked about. But listen to me here. Just hear me out. It has to be funny, though. It has to be clever. It has to be thoughtful so that the person knows, the listener knows, the viewer knows, obviously it's satire. Obviously. The more dangerous a joke you launch into, the more dangerous a premise you launch into, the funnier it has to be in the end. It has to be funny. If you launch into a joke about, man, this is going to be horrible and get me red flagged on YouTube. If you launch into a joke about the Holocaust, first of all, it's distasteful. Everybody knows that it's distasteful and it's horrible. The punchline better be letter for letter perfect. Like, it better be perfect. And it kind of depends on who's saying it too. It has to be perfect. It has to be hilarious. The only time it's offensive to me personally, and I'm a quarter Jewish, and I have a handicapped sister I'll talk about in a second. The only time it's offensive to me personally is if they launch into, I'll use my sister for example. She's quadriplegic. She drowned when she was 2. She was without oxygen for 20 minutes. Somehow her brain survived in some capacity. We have to feed her through a stomach tube, change her diapers every day. That's my sister. Quadriplegic, can't do anything for herself, can't talk. Remember Terry Schiavo,
That's basically my sister. Terry Schiavo's case hit pretty close to home. So growing up, friends would... You have a good night too, UB2 commenter. So growing up with a handicapped sister, some friends would come over. This is in yesteryears. This is before the world changed, basically, if you know what I mean. They would launch into a joke about my sister and her handicapped, and I would tell them, I would stop them. I'd say, this was like 1995 or something like that. I'd be like, hold on. I'm not going to say their names. Like, hold on. Do not finish the rest of this unless it's hilarious. Otherwise, you're just being mean, and I know you're just being mean. Also, no matter if it's funny or not, it's your one. You get one per year. You can launch into a setup about my handicapped sister once per year. So, is this one good enough to make it your once per year? And like, you know, most of the time, like, no, I gotta save it. It wasn't good enough for my one. So eventually he launched into it, and I'd be like, all right, you're about to make a joke about my handicapped sister. Make sure it's a banger, or else you're gonna get punched. Sorry to say, I'm gonna punch you. I'm gonna punch you once, slug you, or worse. So we tell the joke and be like, man, that's funny. That's funny. It's a funny joke. It's a horrible premise. It's about my handicapped sister, but the joke was funny. So it didn't offend me enough to make me hurt you or whatever, call you a butthead, even though he was a butthead. But yeah, so to me, it's just my personal opinion. Comedy, it just has to be funny. That's the only thing that's offensive if it's not funny. And like I said earlier, the premise of the joke dictates the risk of the joke. So if you are a white person and you launch into a joke about a black person, about their race specifically, stop. First of all, it's just a good idea just to not do it. Just don't do it. The odds of your joke being funny enough that you know it's all love is low, depending on the person. So if you finish this joke, it better be hilarious, because if it sucks, then you're just being a bigot. You're just being mean. That's just my personal take. And I totally understand how people would disagree with me on that. 100% understand that. And just really, I get it. I understand. I empathize with that. But back to, and I'll start wrapping it up here. Back to, I always say I'm going to wrap it up, and then I don't wrap it up. But I grew up with a handicapped sister, and there were. I'm going to get real here for a second. So, what I've noticed living with a handicapped person, for those of you just joining for some reason, my sister's quadriplegic, drowned when she was 2, without oxygen for 20 minutes. The doctors didn't think she was going to survive the night. That was back in 1982. She's still alive. Feed her through a stomach tube. If I showed you a picture of her, frankly, you would be shocked. It's how deformed a human being can get. You'd be shocked. And that's what I grew up with. That's what I still live with. She's not here in the house right now. I am her guardian when my mother passes away, but that's my life. A quadriplegic sister, mentally brain dead sister, is my life. And what I've noticed is what happens is capable people speak for handicapped people. Oh, let me take that back. That's not what I meant. Capable people get offended for handicapped people. Capable people who've never lived with a handicapped person, who don't know a handicapped person, get offended on behalf of handicapped people. That's what I'm trying to say here. That's what irks me. Is, friends and stuff saying, oh, it's so horrible. They made a joke about your sister, whatever, like that. Like, you don't live with this. It's like, how? Don't tell me what I can be offended at. I live with this. This is my life. My life is living with a handicapped person. I fed her through her stomach tube this morning. You haven't even dreamed. You've never even seen my sister. You actively avoid the other kids with Down syndrome around the school. And you're being pissed off on my behalf? How dare you? How dare you? The joke you said about my sister was funny. And I get to say that because I live with a handicapped sister. She's my sister. I get to dictate
if his joke was funny or not. I'm not going to sit there and speak for a handicapped person, though, on what is or isn't offensive. But I live with a handicapped person. And I've just noticed that people who have nothing to do with handicapped people are the ones that are so offended for handicapped people. Like, why? You don't know this life. You haven't walked a mile in their shoes. Why do you just assume that we need someone who lives with a handicapped person? Why do you just assume that everyone needs your input on this, needs your offense? That's just me. That's just, I see the world differently because I've grown up with a handicapped sister, completely handicapped. It's the life I know, and it's just so foreign to me that people who don't have any clue about it are offended on behalf of it. Like, you don't know it. You don't know it. You've not walked an inch in these shoes. So there, I'm getting real here on the live stream. I appreciate the passion of social justice warriors, they're called. And again, it's a moniker like woke and canceled, so I don't like using it because it kind of automatically paints some sort of hype opinion about something. But, I'll just use the phrase social justice warriors. I'll just paint a picture: white, 25-year-old, straight female, whatever. Or let's take it a little bit more Facebook. 45-year-old soccer mom, suburbia, pissed off on behalf of black people or people of color or whatever. Like, you don't. To me, it kind of seems offensive. Like, why don't you ask the person of color who you're speaking for, who didn't ask you to speak for them? Isn't it a little bit racist for you to keep spouting off on their behalf? You don't know. Let's talk to them. Let's put them in front of the camera. Let them talk about it. That's the person whose opinion I'm going to care about. That's the person who I'm going to learn from and be empathetic to. The person living it. Not the person pissed off on their behalf. Like they're powerless. Like they're weak. How dare you assume that they're weak? How dare you assume they need you to be pissed on their behalf? And you haven't walked a mile in their shoes. Get out of the way, Karen, and let's bring this person who you're pissed off for, who you're pissed off on behalf of. Put your friend here of color. Let them speak for themselves. They are powerful and they are worthy of their voice being heard. That's the voice I'm going to listen to and be empathetic of and learn from. Not you who just came from Kohl's with a $230 shopping spree for coats and shoes and your latte and your pumpkin spice. I don't care. I don't care what you have to say about that because you are not that. Have I said too much? Is this going to get me canceled? I'm getting more and more viewers now. So, YouTube commenter, you mentioned that you have a handicapped family member. I won't give out too much more of your information, what you're saying here. But I read that last word wrong. I read that last word wrong, and I thought you said a very bad word. And I was like, what? Do I need to edit this stream out here? No. I think everybody knows a handicapped person in their life. And that's not true. Like I just said, not everybody knows, but it's one thing to live with it, have a close family member dealing with it. And I just felt so weird when people in the hallway would, oh, aren't you just so pissed off at that person for making fun of your sister? I'm like, you don't know this life. No, I'm not, by the way. Relax. Gosh. If I'm offended by it, I'll tell you I'm offended by it. Let me feel the way I feel about my life. You don't need to feel for my life because you don't know my life. That's why I don't try to feel for other people's lives. Don't try to speak up for other people because I don't know their story. And me kind of being pissed off for them is like assuming they're weak. No. You're worthy. You're not weak. You're worthy. You have your voice. I will listen to your voice. I will learn from your voice. I'm not going to learn from a voice who has never walked 1 inch
in your shoes. So let's all just cut each other some slack here. I guess that's going to be it for the live stream. All I got to do now in Reaper is basically bounce it out, make sure the levels are okay, and see. I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to play it. I'm not going to speak over it. I'm not going to double audio, but I'm going to look at the limiter and compressor on the master fader and see where I'm at here. Oh, I got to bring it up so you can see it. Go through another grid crippling storm, and I still am able to generate electricity. I have an EV because I think it's cool. It's nerdy technology, and I just think it's really neat. Same reason I have the EV mountain bike. You are worthy of love. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next time. -2, that's okay. I might tweak it a little bit more, bring it up closer to -0.1. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Oh, gosh. YouTube commenter, man. Just, I love you, man. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for whoever joined me for watching. If you watch this later on, appreciate it. This is a long one. How long is this going now? How long have I been going? An hour and 25 minutes. Wowie zowie. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to end the stream. Where can I end the freaking stream here? I'm sorry. I'm just getting over being sick. Is it in YouTube Studio? Can I end the stream? Did I already end it that way? I may have already ended it. If I'm still live, just bear with me here as I... Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you all for watching. Peace out.